Hello, and welcome to the Sleepy Explorer. Tonight we set sail not on stormy seas, but on the quiet rivers of thought, drifting gently toward the heart of France. These videos are meant to be companions at the end of your day, helping you unwind, rest, and let your imagination wander. I will do my best to guide you slowly through stories and details, and while I hope you find them fascinating, I also hope they do not keep you too awake. If they do, well, at least you'll fall asleep a little wiser. Before we begin, may I kindly ask you for a small favour? If you enjoy these nighttime journeys, a gentle tap of the like button and a subscription to the channel would mean the world. It lets me know these sleepy explorations are reaching you. And I'm always curious. Where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it for you as you drift off with this story? So settle in. Maybe you are tucked beneath warm blankets, perhaps with a cup of tea cooling on the bedside table. Or maybe you are simply letting your eyes close while the words carry you across France's landscapes, castles and cafes. And one last note before we wander further, this video is designed for relaxation and education. It is not medical advice, and if you struggle with sleep often, it may help to speak with a qualified professional. Welcome to France, a country that seems to live in the imagination of almost everyone, whether through its food, its fashion, its history or its landscapes. If you look at a map of Europe, France stretches across the western edge of the continent like a painter's brushstroke, reaching from the rolling Atlantic coast in the west, across fertile valleys and bustling cities, to the towering Alps in the east, where snow still crowns the mountain peaks well into summer. To the north, its shores touch the English Channel, separating it from Britain by just a narrow strip of water, while to the south, France dips its toes into the glittering blue of the Mediterranean Sea. France is one of the largest countries in Europe by land area, and its borders make it something like a crossroads of the continent. It shares boundaries with no fewer than 8 different countries. Belgium and Luxembourg sit to the northeast, Germany and Switzerland to the east, while Italy presses in along the southeastern frontier. Further south lies Spain, divided from France by the rugged spine of the Pyrenees Mountains. To the tiny country of Monaco, a city-state perched on the Mediterranean, France provides almost a protective embrace. And of course, Andorra, tucked neatly into the Pyrenees, completes the list. With so many neighbours, France has always been both an open doorway and a meeting point, a place where ideas, languages, goods and armies have crossed back and forth for centuries. The country's geography is as varied as a carefully designed menu. In the north, you find the green plains of Normandy and the wide fields of Picardy, where dairy cows graze, and the breeze carries the scent of apples. Travel to the west and the coastline gives way to dramatic cliffs and sandy beaches, lapped by the restless Atlantic. Further inland lies the Loire Valley, often called the Garden of France, dotted with vineyards and storybook castles. Move south and the land grows warmer, the skies brighter, until you arrive in Provence, where lavender fields roll out like a purple carpet and cicadas sing in the summer heat. In the east, Burgundy and Alsace bring their own flavours, with vineyards climbing the hillsides, while the far southeast rises suddenly into the jagged Alps, where villages cling to steep slopes and mountain peaks touch the clouds. With such a landscape, first impressions of France are rarely simple. It is a country that appears elegant and refined, yet also deeply rural and earthy. Paris is a city of grand boulevards, high fashion, and museums overflowing with treasures. Yet only a train ride away you can find villages where life moves at the same pace it has for generations, marked by church bells, weekly markets, and leisurely meals. France is at once romantic and practical, reserved and passionate, proud of its traditions but constantly reinventing itself. These contradictions are not flaws, but part of what makes the country so captivating. Take Paris, for example. The French capital is famous for its wide avenues lined with elegant trees, the banks of the River Seine glittering under lamplight, and the unmistakable silhouette of the Eiffel Tower rising above it all. Yet Paris is not just a postcard image. It is noisy, busy, and endlessly alive, where the smell of fresh bread drifts out from bakeries in the early morning, and students lounge along the riverbanks late into the night. Just beyond the city, however, lie the forests and royal palaces of Ile-de-France, reminders of kings and queens who once ruled with absolute power. Head to the south of the country, and you are greeted with an entirely different France. The Mediterranean coast basks in sunshine for much of the year, its towns painted in warm ochres and reds, with laundry hanging from balconies and markets spilling into the streets. The Riviera from Nice to Cannes feels glamorous and indulgent, yet only a short drive inland are sleepy villages where time seems to have paused. Here the scent of lavender fills the air, and the landscape is punctuated by olive groves and vineyards. The French Alps, on the other hand, feel like another world again. Here winter transforms villages into snow-dusted postcards, and skiing has become almost a cultural ritual. Mont Blanc, Western Europe's tallest peak, towers proudly above them all, a constant reminder of the grandeur of the landscape. In the summer, the same valleys are alive with hikers, wildflowers, and the sound of cowbells echoing across green pastures. France is also shaped by its rivers. The Seine, winding through Paris, has been a witness to countless moments in history, from medieval trade to revolutionary uprisings. The Loire flows gently past vineyards and Renaissance castles, earning its valley a reputation for beauty and romance. The Rhône powers through the southeast, linking the Alps to the Mediterranean, while the Garonne sweeps across the southwest on its way to the Atlantic. These rivers are not just geographical features, but lifelines, shaping trade, culture, and settlement for centuries. And what about the people's first impressions of their own country? Many French citizens see France as a delicate balance of deep tradition and bold modernity. It is the birthplace of Gothic cathedrals, Enlightenment philosophy, and revolutionary ideals, yet also a hub for cutting-edge fashion, cinema, and technology. The French language itself embodies this balance, fiercely protected by institutions yet constantly evolving through new expressions and borrowed words. Perhaps nowhere is this dual character more visible than in French daily life. On one hand, there is the café, a timeless institution where locals gather over small cups of strong coffee to discuss politics, gossip, or nothing at all. On the other hand, France is at the forefront of international business and innovation, hosting startups, laboratories, and cultural festivals that draw attention from across the world. The same nation that reveres ancient stone villages also sends high-speed trains hurtling across the countryside and satellites into orbit. This combination of tradition and progress also reveals itself in the countryside. Farmers maintain centuries-old methods of cheese-making or wine-making, tied closely to the land and the seasons. Meanwhile, wind turbines rise above rolling hills, and solar panels gleam in southern fields, showing France's investment in a sustainable future. The old and the new coexist, not without friction, but with a kind of resilience that feels distinctly French. Of course, no sensory portrait of France would be complete without pausing to simply breathe in the air of its regions. Imagine the golden light of Paris at dusk, spilling over bridges and rooftops. Picture the lavender fields of Provence stretching endlessly, buzzing with bees under the summer sun. Hear the roar of the Atlantic waves crashing against Brittany's rocky coastline, and then contrast that with the quiet, crisp mountain air of the Alps. France is not one single impression, but a mosaic of sensations stitched together across landscapes and centuries. For visitors and dreamers alike, France is a country that rarely fits neatly into one box. It is refined, yet rustic. It is modern, yet timeless. Its geography alone tells a story of variety and contrast, from cliffs to valleys, from vineyards to glaciers. The borders that link it to so many neighbours have brought with them layers of culture, conflict, and cooperation, shaping a nation that is as much a part of Europe as it is uniquely itself. To arrive in France, whether by plane, train, or imagination, is to arrive in a land that knows how to charm every sense. It is a place of light and shadow, of aroma and flavour, of noise and stillness. And perhaps that is the first thing to know about France. It does not offer just one welcome, but many. Each region, each city, each village opens the door a little differently, inviting you to see, hear, taste, and feel the country in your own way. France is a country where the present often feels like it has one foot firmly planted in the past. Every cobblestone street, every weathered stone wall, every cathedral spire seems to whisper echoes of another era. To understand France is to wander through a vast corridor of history, where each century has left behind its own treasures, scars, and stories. Long before there was a France, there was Gaul, a land of Celtic tribes. The Gauls were fierce warriors, skilled farmers and artisans, and they left behind an enduring cultural legacy. They were not one united people, but rather a patchwork of tribes, each with its own customs and leaders. Their resistance to outside invaders became legendary, most famously in their clashes with Rome. Julius Caesar himself chronicled his campaigns in Gaul in painstaking detail, recounting how the Roman legions subdued the tribes after years of bloody warfare. One of the most celebrated Gauls, Vercingetorix, rose as a leader who briefly united the tribes against Caesar, only to be captured and paraded in chains through Rome. With Rome's victory, Gaul became part of the Roman Empire, and this marked the beginning of a transformation that still shapes France today. Roman rule brought roads, aqueducts, amphitheatres, and a taste for urban life. Cities such as Lyon, Nîmes, and Arles still bear the mark of Roman architecture, with arenas and temples standing as sturdy reminders of that era. Latin, the language of Rome, would eventually evolve into French, and Roman law and administration laid the groundwork for the structures of governance that followed. Christianity also arrived during the later Roman period, planting seeds that would later grow into the towering cathedrals of medieval France. As the Roman Empire crumbled, the region entered a turbulent age. Germanic tribes such as the Franks began to settle and gain power. It was from the Franks that the country would eventually take its name. By the 8th century, a man named Charles, better known to history as Charlemagne, or Charles the Great, rose to prominence. Crowned emperor in the year 800 in Rome, Charlemagne's empire stretched across much of Western and Central Europe. His rule marked a brief but brilliant flowering of culture and learning, sometimes called the Carolingian Renaissance. Schools were established, Latin texts were copied and preserved, and governance was strengthened. Though his empire did not last long after his death, Charlemagne is remembered as one of the founding figures of Europe and a symbol of unity and learning in the early medieval world. The centuries that followed were shaped by the drama of the Middle Ages. France became a land of castles and cathedrals, knights and troubadours. Powerful dynasties like the Capetians and later the Valois ruled over a patchwork of feudal territories. Stone castles rose on hilltops, serving both as fortresses and symbols of noble power. In the countryside, peasants worked the fields under the watchful eye of their lords, while cities slowly grew as centres of trade and craft. Perhaps the most visible legacy of the Middle Ages in France are its cathedrals. The Gothic style, born in the 12th century, reached its height in France. Cathedrals such as Notre Dame in Paris, Chartres, Reims, and Amiens remain awe-inspiring examples of medieval ambition. Their pointed arches, ribbed vaults, and stained glass windows seem designed not only to impress, but to lift the soul heavenward. Pilgrimages drew thousands along routes like the Camino de Santiago, and faith permeated every aspect of life. But it was also a time of conflict. The 100 Years' War between France and England raged intermittently through the 14th and 15th centuries. This era gave rise to enduring figures like Joan of Arc, a young peasant girl who claimed divine guidance and led French forces to crucial victories before her capture and execution. Her story of courage and sacrifice has become woven into France's national identity. When the Renaissance arrived, France embraced it with characteristic flair. Beginning in the 15th and 16th centuries, new ideas swept through Europe from Italy, bringing a fresh emphasis on art, literature, philosophy, and science. French kings like Francis I were great patrons of the arts, inviting Italian masters such as Leonardo da Vinci to their courts. The chateaux of the Loire Valley, with their graceful designs and ornamental gardens, remain dazzling symbols of this Renaissance spirit. Literature flourished too, with writers like Rabelais and Montaigne expanding the boundaries of thought and humour. The Renaissance was also a time of religious upheaval, as the Protestant Reformation and the Catholic Counter-Reformation divided communities and led to wars of religion that scarred the 16th century. The 17th and 18th centuries brought the rise of absolute monarchy, culminating in the rule of Louis XIV, the Sun King, whose court at Versailles set the standard for opulence and grandeur. Under his reign, France became the dominant power in Europe, exporting its language, art, and style across the continent. But this glory came at a price. Heavy taxation, rigid social structures, and inequality simmered beneath the glittering surface of Versailles. By the late 18th century, those tensions erupted in the French Revolution. In 1789, crowds stormed the Bastille in Paris, a symbol of royal tyranny, and the old order began to collapse. France declared itself a republic, kings lost their crowns and eventually their heads, and revolutionary ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity shook not only France but the entire world. These ideals would inspire revolutions and reform movements far beyond France's borders. Amidst the chaos emerged a new figure, Napoleon Bonaparte, a brilliant general who crowned himself emperor in 1804. Under his leadership, France conquered vast swathes of Europe and exported many revolutionary reforms, such as the Napoleonic Code, which continues to influence legal systems around the world. Yet Napoleon's ambition also led to devastating wars, and after his defeat at Waterloo in 1815, France once again became a monarchy before eventually settling into cycles of republics and empires. The 19th century was marked by industrialization, cultural flowering, and political upheaval. Writers such as Victor Hugo and Alexandre Dumas filled bookshelves, while painters like Monet, Renoir, and Degas transformed art with Impressionism. France also built a colonial empire that stretched across Africa and Asia, leaving legacies still felt today. By the early 20th century, however, France faced trials of a different kind. The First World War devastated the French countryside, with battles fought on French soil that left scars still visible in fields and villages. The Somme, Verdun, and the Marne became names associated with unimaginable loss. France emerged victorious but deeply shaken. Barely 2 decades later, the Second World War brought new horrors. German forces invaded in 1940, Paris fell, and the country was divided between occupied zones and the collaborationist Vichy regime. Resistance fighters, however, carried on a struggle in secret, and by 1944, with Allied support, France was liberated. The memory of those years remains a powerful part of national identity, shaping how France views both war and freedom. From the ruins of war, France helped to build a new Europe. As one of the founders of the European Union, France sought to ensure that the conflicts of the past would not repeat. Its role in international politics, culture, and economics continues to reflect both pride in its heritage and a determination to remain a leading voice on the world stage. Even today, the past is never far away in France. The cobblestones of Paris still bear the footsteps of revolutionaries, poets, and philosophers. Village squares still host markets that have been held for centuries. National pride often draws upon historical figures, from Charlemagne to Joan of Arc, from Louis XIV to Charles de Gaulle. The weight of history is not a burden here, but a source of identity, shaping how the French see themselves and how they present themselves to the world. France's story is one of resilience, creativity, and reinvention. Each age has left behind something tangible, whether in stone, in words, or in ideas. The Romans gave their roads and language. The Franks and Charlemagne gave the vision of a united realm. The Middle Ages left soaring cathedrals and epic legends. The Renaissance gave France a love of beauty and thought. The Revolution gave it ideals still quoted today. And the modern age gave it the strength to rebuild and move forward after some of history's darkest chapters. Walking through France, past ancient ruins, medieval castles, Renaissance palaces, and monuments to more recent struggles, is like turning the pages of an enormous book, one written over 2,000 years and still being added to. The past is not gone here. It lingers, it instructs, and it breathes in the life of the present. To truly know France, it is not enough to trace its borders or read its history. One must listen to its voices, feel the rhythm of its social life, and observe the small gestures that reveal who the French people are. The heartbeat of the nation lies not only in monuments and landscapes, but in language, customs, family tables, and the personalities that shift from one region to another. Language has always been central to French identity. French itself, descended from Latin with Celtic and Germanic influences, became not only a national tongue but a point of pride. As far back as the 16th century, rulers such as Francois I declared French the official language of administration, pushing aside Latin. Centuries later, the French Academy was created to safeguard the language, ensuring that words and grammar followed precise rules. Even today, debates flare up when too many English words slip into French vocabulary. The French often treat their language like a priceless artwork that must be polished, framed, and defended. Yet beneath this careful preservation, France has long been home to a rich chorus of regional dialects and languages. Breton, spoken in the far west in Brittany, carries echoes of Celtic heritage. Occitan, once widespread in the south, still lingers in rural villages and in cultural festivals where it is celebrated through song and poetry. Alsatian, influenced heavily by German, reflects the borderland history of Alsace, where loyalties and languages have shifted back and forth over centuries. Basque, in the Pyrenean southwest, is even more unique, being unrelated to any known language family. For generations, these regional tongues were discouraged in schools as the nation sought unity under French. Today, however, there has been a revival of interest, with local associations, schools and festivals working to preserve these voices. Beyond language, the pulse of France beats strongest at the family table. The French are famous for elevating meals into social rituals, and Sunday lunches are often the crown jewel of the week. Families gather around tables that groan under courses of starters, mains, cheeses, and desserts, with conversations flowing as steadily as the wine. It is not unusual for these lunches to stretch across an entire afternoon, blurring into evening. Food is never just about sustenance. It is about belonging, storytelling, and reinforcing bonds. Even in cities where life is fast-paced, the importance of sitting down together remains deeply ingrained. This devotion to shared meals extends into everyday social life. Cafés are almost an extension of the living room, open to all. A café terrace in France is not simply a place to drink coffee. It is a stage upon which life unfolds. Friends meet for animated discussions, solitary writers fill notebooks, retirees watch the world go by. The café is where politics, literature and gossip all mix, often accompanied by nothing more elaborate than an espresso or a glass of wine. In the heart of a bustling neighbourhood, it offers a sense of continuity, a reminder that life is meant to be savoured rather than rushed. Social interactions in France also carry their own particular customs. One of the most distinctive is la bise, the tradition of greeting with kisses on the cheek. Depending on the region, the number of kisses varies, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, and in certain places even 4. For newcomers it can be confusing, but for the French it is a natural gesture of warmth and recognition. A handshake may suffice in formal settings, but among friends, la bise is a mark of familiarity and friendliness. These small rituals, whether a kiss, a handshake, or even a cheerful wave, help to weave the fabric of community life. At the heart of French national identity lies the famous motto, liberté, égalité, fraternity, liberty, equality, fraternity. Born in the fires of the Revolution, these words are more than a slogan. They are a compass by which the French measure themselves and their society. Liberty reflects a deep-rooted commitment to individual freedom, visible in the vibrant press and in the long tradition of intellectual debate. Equality speaks to the French belief in fairness and in universal rights, although the nation has had to struggle repeatedly to live up to this ideal. Fraternity captures the sense of solidarity and collective responsibility. From neighbourhood associations to nationwide protests, together these three values form a kind of secular creed, proudly inscribed on public buildings and taught to school children from an early age. Yet for all this shared identity, the personalities of different regions within France reveal striking contrasts. Parisians, for instance, have earned a reputation, fair or not, for being brisk, stylish, and perhaps a touch aloof. They live in a city where fashion, art, and politics collide daily, and their sense of pace reflects that intensity. In the south, by contrast, Provençals are often seen as more relaxed, expressive, and tied to the rhythms of sun and seasons. The sound of cicadas, the taste of olive oil, and the habit of lingering outdoors shape their way of life. In Normandy, the people are known for their quiet determination and a sturdy character shaped by farming and by centuries of facing the winds of the Channel coast. In Brittany, a proud sense of distinct heritage prevails, with festivals, music, and cuisine reflecting a Celtic spirit. This regional variety does not fracture France, but enriches it. Just as its geography offers mountains, plains, and coasts, its people bring a spectrum of temperaments and traditions. The French may argue passionately about politics, art, or football, but there is also a shared sense of belonging that unites them across their differences. Hospitality in France often takes a form both generous and straightforward. Guests are offered food and drink, not in excess, but in a way that emphasises quality. A carefully chosen wine, a local cheese, or a fresh baguette is as much a gesture of welcome as it is nourishment. Visitors are often struck by the way even casual gatherings feel thoughtful, as if each detail matters. That attention reflects not pretension, but a cultural belief that beauty and pleasure are part of daily life, not luxuries to be reserved for special occasions. Community life is also shaped by the rhythm of celebrations. From baptisms and weddings to local fairs and neighbourhood festivals, moments of gathering are woven into the year. These events are not merely formalities, but opportunities to reinforce the bonds of family, friendship, and civic pride. Even protests, which the French approach with remarkable energy, carry a social aspect. Marches often resemble parades, complete with banners, chants, and a certain flair. All these elements, language, family meals, greetings, mottos, and regional character, form the intricate pattern of what it means to be French. The heartbeat of the people is not uniform, but it is steady. It pulses in the cafés of Paris, in the lavender fields of Provence, in the apple orchards of Normandy, and in the music of Breton festivals. It is a rhythm that blends tradition and change, individuality and solidarity, elegance and earthiness. To walk through France is to hear this heartbeat everywhere, sometimes loud and insistent, sometimes quiet and subtle. It is in the voices of children learning French poems in school, in the laughter over a Sunday lunch that stretches into the evening, in the polite kiss of greeting on a chilly morning. It is a rhythm that has carried the nation through triumphs and struggles, binding its people together while allowing for endless diversity. This, more than any monument or museum, is the living essence of France. To understand France is to recognise that its spirit has been shaped as much by faith and belief as by food, politics, or art. For centuries, Catholicism stood at the centre of French life, leaving behind not only breathtaking works of architecture, but also traditions, rituals, and ideas that continue to ripple through society even in an age where religion holds a far more complex place. The story of France's spiritual landscape is a tapestry of soaring cathedrals, sacred journeys, and debates over the role of belief in a secular republic. Catholicism was not always the dominant force, but once it took root, it became the backbone of France's identity. Kings were anointed in sacred ceremonies, bishops wielded power alongside nobles, and the rhythm of life itself was tied to the church calendar. Baptisms, marriages, and funerals marked the milestones of existence. Saints' days, feasts, and fasts filled a year. It is no exaggeration to say that for over 1,000 years, the church was the heartbeat of the nation. One of the most visible reminders of this legacy is the Gothic cathedral. Rising above medieval towns like stone forests, these cathedrals were feats of engineering and imagination. Notre Dame de Paris, with its flying buttresses and gargoyles, became not only a religious centre, but a symbol of the city itself. Chartres Cathedral, further southwest, is famed for its stained glass windows, vast sheets of jewel-coloured light that tell biblical stories with astonishing artistry. Reims Cathedral, where French kings were crowned, carried enormous symbolic weight, a place where politics and spirituality intertwined. These cathedrals were not merely buildings, they were statements of ambition, faith, and community pride, built over decades, sometimes centuries, by hands that often never saw their completion. Beyond the cathedrals, France was, and still is, laced with pilgrimage routes. Perhaps the most famous is the Way of St. James, or the Camino de Santiago, which leads to the Shrine of St. James in Santiago de Compostela, Spain. For centuries, pilgrims have crossed France along various paths, through Le Puy, Vézelay, or Tours, stopping at monasteries, chapels, and hostels along the way. These journeys were not only acts of faith, but also opportunities for cultural exchange, as travellers from across Europe mingled and shared stories. Even today, many still walk these ancient routes, some for religious devotion, others for reflection, health, or simply to experience the landscape in a slower, more meaningful way. Over time, however, France became home to more than Catholicism. Protestantism took root during the 16th century, leading to fierce wars of religion between Catholics and Huguenots. Though Catholicism ultimately maintained dominance, Protestant communities endured, particularly in the south. Judaism, present since Roman times, grew into vibrant communities despite periods of persecution and hardship. In more recent centuries, waves of immigration have brought Islam to France, making it today the second largest religion in the country. Mosques can now be found across the nation, serving millions of Muslims whose heritage often ties back to North and West Africa. This religious diversity has given France a unique modern character, but it has also presented challenges. The French concept of laïcité, or secularism, stands at the heart of this tension. Enshrined in law in 1905, laicite firmly separated church and state, ensuring that the government would neither promote nor fund religion. The idea was to protect freedom of belief while preventing religious influence over politics. Yet in practice, laicite has often been the subject of heated debate. Questions about religious symbols in public life, such as the wearing of headscarves or crosses in schools, have sparked controversy, revealing how deeply France struggles to balance its long Catholic heritage with its modern, pluralist identity. Despite the firm embrace of secularism, the spiritual imagination of France has never truly disappeared. The bells of village churches still toll across the countryside. Christmas remains a season of nativity scenes, midnight masses, and festive markets. Easter is celebrated with chocolate bells and eggs, recalling older traditions of fasting and feasting. In Provence, Epiphany is marked with a galette des rois, a cake hiding a tiny figurine inside, the finder crowned as king or queen for the day. Festivals of light, harvest rituals, and processions echo ancient rhythms, whether they are tied explicitly to religion or simply to the cycle of seasons. These traditions often blur the lines between sacred and cultural. Even those who describe themselves as secular or non-religious frequently participate in festivals, attend weddings and churches, or gather at Christmas. It is less about doctrine than about continuity, community, and shared memory. In this way, the French relationship with spirituality is subtle, more woven into the fabric of life than shouted from the rooftops. In some places, faith has also inspired art beyond architecture. The chants of monks in Benedictine and Cistercian monasteries filled the air for centuries and influenced the development of Western music. Illuminated manuscripts, painted by hand in cloisters, carried both religious text and exquisite artistry. Pilgrimage churches often contain relics, bones or belongings of saints, that were believed to hold divine power, drawing crowds of the faithful. Today, while fewer may make the journey in search of miracles, many still travel to see these relics as part of France's layered history. There is also something undeniably spiritual in the way the French landscape itself has been seen. Mountains and rivers were once believed to hold sacred qualities. Springs were dedicated to saints, often built upon sites that may have been sacred long before Christianity arrived. Even the simple act of walking through a vineyard or lighting a candle in a quiet chapel can feel imbued with a kind of reverence, whether or not one holds religious faith. Modern France is also home to lively interfaith communities, where dialogue between Catholics, Protestants, Jews, Muslims, and secular organisations is common. Cultural festivals, interfaith councils, and charity work often bring people together. These efforts reflect a recognition that, while beliefs differ, the need for connection and meaning remains universal. Yet alongside this coexistence lies tension. France has faced moments of division, particularly around questions of immigration and integration. At times, faith becomes a stage upon which broader struggles about identity, culture, and belonging are acted out. But if history shows anything, it is that France has always wrestled with difference, often painfully, and has found ways, imperfect but enduring, to continue forward. To walk through France today is to see this spiritual landscape everywhere. In Paris, Notre Dame still rises proudly, even as it undergoes restoration after the fire of 2019. In Chartres, the stained glass still glows with the same rich blues it has displayed for centuries. Along quiet country roads, small chapels still open their doors to travellers. In Marseille, the call to prayer rises from mosques, while synagogues and Protestant churches hold their own services nearby. In all of this, France's identity is neither purely religious nor entirely secular, but something far more layered and complex. The French spirit, in many ways, has become about holding opposites in balance: the sacred and the secular, tradition and progress, unity and diversity. The nation's motto of liberty, equality and fraternity extends even into this realm, asking how people of many beliefs can live together while still protecting the individual's freedom of thought. It is an ongoing dialogue, one that continues to shape the heart of the nation. France's spiritual landscape is not frozen in time, but alive, shifting, and deeply human. It carries the weight of Catholic cathedrals and pilgrimage routes, the vibrancy of new communities, the challenges of secularism, and the persistence of ritual. It is as much about stained glass and stone towers as it is about quiet candles lit for loved ones, markets bustling at Christmas, and neighbours gathering for festivals that tie the seasons together. In this mix of history and modernity, belief and culture, one can glimpse the soul of France in all its depth and contradiction. Few things define France more vividly than its food. In fact, French cuisine is so highly regarded that in the year 2010, UNESCO declared the gastronomic meal of the French part of the world's intangible cultural heritage. This was not about a single dish or ingredient, but about the ritual of dining itself. The idea that sitting down together to share carefully prepared food and wine is a cultural treasure worth protecting. For the French, meals are not hurried stops for fuel, but moments to savour, to talk, and to connect. At the heart of this tradition lies the extraordinary variety of regional specialties. Each corner of France has something unique simmering on the stove. Along the Mediterranean coast, especially in Marseille, one finds bouillabaisse, a hearty fisherman's stew. Traditionally, it was made from the catch of the day, often the less glamorous fish that were too bony or tough to sell, boiled with saffron, garlic, and herbs, and served with bread spread with a fiery sauce called rouille. Over time, this humble dish transformed into a celebrated symbol of Provençal cooking, where flavours of the sea mingle with the fragrance of southern spices. In the southwest, cassoulet rules the table. It is a slow-cooked casserole of white beans, sausages, and duck confit, rich and comforting, as filling as the landscape of rolling hills and hearty farmers that created it. The dish speaks of patience, cooked for hours until the beans soak up every drop of flavour. Legends of local rivalries swirl around cassoulet, with towns like Carcassonne and Castelnaudary each claiming their version as the original and best. Meanwhile, in Burgundy, coq au vin has become an emblem of rustic refinement. Chicken braised slowly in red wine, with mushrooms, onions, and lardons, embodies the philosophy of transforming modest ingredients into something deeply satisfying. The dish reflects the agricultural traditions of the region, where wine and poultry were staples, elevated through technique and time. No journey into French food will be complete without pausing on the subject of cheese and wine, two products so intertwined with French identity that they are almost inseparable from the national character. France produces hundreds upon hundreds of cheeses, each linked to a specific region, landscape, and tradition. From the creamy richness of Brie, to the sharp tang of Roquefort, to the nutty firmness of Comté. Every cheese carries a sense of its terroir, the unique combination of soil, climate and culture that makes it distinct. There is even a saying in France that there are as many cheeses as there are days in the year, and some claim even more. Wine, of course, needs no introduction. Vineyards blanket the country, from Champagne in the north to Bordeaux in the southwest, from Burgundy to the Loire Valley, from Alsace along the German border to Provence by the sea. Each bottle tells a story of its region. The French concept of terroir insists that wine is not just about the grape, but about the earth, the slope of the hill, the wind, and even the hand that tends the vines. Wine in France is not only for special occasions, but a daily companion to meals, chosen with care and enjoyed in moderation. Pride in these traditions runs deep, and disputes over authenticity, appellations and labels can be as passionate as debates over politics. Bread and pastry hold a place just as sacred in the French heart. The humble baguette, with its crisp golden crust and airy interior, is more than a staple. It is a symbol of daily life. Early in the morning, the smell of freshly baked baguettes drifts through the streets of villages and cities alike, and carrying one home under your arm feels like the most natural gesture in the world. In 2022, UNESCO recognised the baguette as part of the world's intangible cultural heritage, underlining its role in French society. Croissants, buttery and flaky, arrived in France from Austria in the 17th century, but the French made them their own. Today, they are inseparable from the image of a French breakfast, paired with coffee or hot chocolate. Pastries go far beyond croissants, however. Think of pastel-coloured macarons, with their delicate crunch and soft filling, each one a tiny masterpiece. Eclairs filled with cream, tarts studded with fruit, and millefeuilles layered with custards all showcase the artistry of French patisserie. Visiting a bakery in France is an act of temptation, where the only difficulty lies in choosing. Dining in France follows its own pace and rituals, often bewildering to visitors used to quicker meals. Lunches can last 2 hours, dinners even longer, with multiple courses carefully ordered. An appetizer, the main dish, cheese, dessert, and always bread and wine on the table. Conversation is as important as the food itself, with meals serving as stages for debate, storytelling and laughter. Restaurants often do not rush patrons to leave, since the expectation is that a meal should be savoured rather than hurried. Even in everyday life, taking time for food is seen as essential to well-being. Cafes occupy a special place in this landscape. To sit at a small round table on a terrace, sipping coffee while watching the world go by, is one of France's great pleasures. Cafes are not just for caffeine, but for community. Writers have filled notebooks there, artists have sketched, and friends have debated everything from politics to philosophy. Ordering a coffee might grant you hours of sitting without interruption, immersed in the rhythm of the street. Seasonal and holiday foods carry their own charm. At the start of the year, families gather to share the galette des rois, or king's cake, on Epiphany. Inside the flaky pastry lies a hidden figurine, and whoever finds it in their slice is crowned king or queen for the day, complete with a paper crown. At Easter, chocolate bells and eggs fill shop windows, a playful nod to the church bells that, according to legend, fly to Rome and return filled with treats. Christmas feasts are lavish affairs, with dishes such as oysters, foie gras, roast meats, and the famous bûche de Noël, a Yule log cake decorated to resemble a log in the hearth. These traditions tie the calendar to the table, ensuring that food is not just nourishment, but also celebration. The beauty of French cuisine lies not only in its flavours, but in its philosophy. It celebrates balance, patience, and respect for ingredients. A tomato in Provence is not just a tomato, but the essence of summer sunshine captured in a single bite. A wheel of camembert is not just cheese, but the product of centuries of refinement. The French view food as culture, as memory, and as art. This is why UNESCO recognized it as part of humanity's shared heritage. It's a reminder that meals are more than calories, they are acts of connection. French cuisine also manages to be both grand and simple. It can dazzle with Michelin-starred sophistication or charm with a rustic stew shared at a family table. What unites these extremes is a sense of care. Each dish, whether humble or refined, carries with it pride in tradition and pleasure in sharing. Perhaps this is why the French dining experience continues to enchant the world. Not because it is exotic or inaccessible, but because it elevates the ordinary into something extraordinary. Food in France is memory, identity, and joy. It is the crackle of a baguette crust, the swirl of wine in a glass, the laughter around a crowded table, and the delight of unwrapping a perfect macaron. In every corner of the country, traditions continue to thrive, reminding all who sit at the table that eating well is not simply an indulgence, but a way of honouring life itself. France has always been a nation that seems to live in music. Its songs drift from village squares, echo from cathedral choirs, pulse through concert halls, and spill into the streets from open café doors. To wander through France is to encounter sound woven into daily life, from the traditions of folk music that preserve centuries of history, to the timeless voices of its singers, to the modern beats that fill clubs and festivals. Music in France is not simply entertainment, but a cultural mirror reflecting identity, memory, and imagination. The roots of French music stretch deep into the soil of its regions, where folk traditions have preserved stories and rhythms across generations. In Brittany, the sound of the biniou, a type of bagpipe, and the bombard, a double reed woodwind, once carried across fields during weddings and village gatherings. Breton folk songs often celebrated the sea, the land, and the cycle of life, their distinctive cadences as rugged and enduring as the coastline itself. Dances like the andro and the gavotte brought entire communities together, turning music into both celebration and identity. Travel south to Occitania, and the troubadours of the Middle Ages left behind songs of courtly love, composed in the Occitan language and performed for lords and ladies. These lyrical traditions helped shape the very idea of romantic poetry and music in Europe. In Corsica, polyphonic singing still flourishes. Groups of men gather to perform haunting harmonies that rise and fall like waves, voices blending in a style that feels both ancient and timeless. These songs are not simply performances, but communal expressions of heritage, spirituality, and pride. As the centuries turned, France became home to one of its most defining genres, the chanson. The word simply means song, but in practice, the chanson became a vessel for poetry, storytelling, and emotion. In the 20th century, it found its voice in singers whose names still resonate across the globe. Edith Piaf, the Little Sparrow, with her powerful and heartbreaking delivery, gave the world anthems of love and loss like La Vie en Rose and Non, je ne regrette rien. Her voice carried the weight of experience, transforming personal pain into universal emotion. Charles Aznavour, often called Francis Frank Sinatra, brought sophistication and warmth to the chanson tradition. With a career that spanned over 70 years, he sang in multiple languages and performed on international stages, yet always carried the intimate quality of a storyteller confiding in his audience. Georges Brassens, with his guitar and wry wit, sang songs that balanced humour and philosophy, while Jacques Brel, though Belgian, became one of the chanson's greatest interpreters, pouring raw passion into every syllable. Alongside the chanson, France nurtured a rich classical tradition. Composers such as Hector Berlioz in the 19th century stretched the boundaries of orchestral sound, infusing symphonies with drama and grandeur. Claude Debussy, with works like Clair de Lune and Prélude à l'après-midi d'un faune, painted music with impressionistic colours, blurring edges and creating moods that seemed to shimmer like light on water. Maurice Ravel, his contemporary, combined precision with imagination, giving the world Bolero, a hypnotic crescendo that remains one of the most recognised orchestral pieces ever written. These composers didn't merely write notes on a page, they shaped how people experienced sound itself, influencing music far beyond France. Opera too found a natural home in France. Composers such as Charles Gounod, Georges Bizet, and Jules Massenet wrote works that filled theatres with sweeping arias and unforgettable melodies. Bizet's Carmen, set in Spain but composed in Paris, remains one of the most performed operas in the world, its fiery rhythms and tragic story captivating audiences for over a century. The 20th century brought new currents. As jazz crossed the Atlantic, France embraced it eagerly. Paris in the 1920s and 30s became a hub for American jazz musicians, who found audiences and acceptance in smoky clubs along the left bank. French musicians joined in, creating a distinct blend of jazz with local flavours. The guitarist Django Reinhardt, with his dazzling gypsy jazz style, remains a legend, his swift fingers and inventive improvisations leaving a permanent mark on global music. Modern French music refuses to be confined to a single tradition. In the latter half of the 20th century, pop singers like Françoise Hardy and Serge Gainsbourg brought a chic, avant-garde quality to the stage. Gainsbourg in particular, with his provocative lyrics and smoky voice, became both adored and controversial, embodying the tension between tradition and rebellion. The rise of French rock bands and pop stars mirrored broader European and American trends, yet always carried a distinctly French sensibility, elegant, witty, and often tinged with irony. Today, France's musical landscape is astonishingly diverse. Rap and hip-hop have taken root as powerful voices of expression, particularly among younger generations in cities like Paris and Marseille. Artists such as I.A.M., MC Solar, and more recently Orelsan and Nekfeu have given French rap its own identity, lyrical, sharp, and socially engaged. These performers address themes of identity, inequality, and everyday life, offering not only entertainment, but commentary on modern society. Electronic music, too, has found a natural home in France. The duo Daft Punk became international icons, blending house music with funk and disco, while David Guetta filled stadiums with dance anthems. French electronic music often combines innovation with accessibility, ensuring its place on both underground club floors and mainstream radio. Despite the variety, music in France remains closely tied to daily life. On the streets of Montmartre in Paris, accordion players still set the mood with songs that seem to belong to another century, their melodies echoing the romantic clichés of the city, while also genuinely filling the air with atmosphere. In the metro, buskers perform everything from Bach to Bob Dylan, adding a soundtrack to daily commutes. Summer brings festivals of every size and flavour, from the sprawling Eurocaines Rock Festival in Belfort to the sacred atmosphere of the Festival d'Avignon, where theatre and music merge in historic courtyards. The Fête de la Musique, held each year on the summer solstice, turns the entire country into one enormous stage. Street, squares and parks fill with performances from professionals and amateurs alike, celebrating the simple joy of sound. Music also plays its role in more intimate moments. Families sing old lullabies to children. Regional folk groups keep their traditions alive, and choirs fill churches during holidays. National anthems ring out at sporting events, binding crowds together in shared identity, while protest songs echo during demonstrations, blending political energy with melody. In this way, music continues to function not only as art, but as a tool of connection. What makes the sounds and songs of France so enduring is their ability to hold contradictions. They can be refined or rustic, rebellious or traditional, local or international. They move seamlessly from ancient harmonies in Corsican villages to electronic beats in Parisian clubs. They can console, inspire, provoke, or simply entertain. Above all, they remind listeners that France is a country where music has always mattered, not only as performance, but as part of what it means to be alive. From bagpipes in Brittany to Piaf's soaring voice, from Debussy's shimmering chords to the steady rhythm of modern rap, the soundtrack of France is as varied as its landscapes. It is a living, evolving symphony, played not just in concert halls or recordings, but in the everyday lives of its people. France has long been described as a cradle of beauty, a place where art and creativity do not simply live in galleries or ateliers, but spill into the very streets, gardens, and fabrics of daily life. Few nations have shaped the world's imagination of elegance and artistry quite like this one, and perhaps nowhere is this more visible than in the museums that hold treasures from every age. The Louvre in Paris, once a royal palace, now reigns as the most visited museum on earth. Its glass pyramid may look strikingly modern, but the treasures within span thousands of years. Here you can stand before the Mona Lisa, whose small size surprises almost everyone, or the winged victory of Samothrace, poised in eternal movement. The Louvre is more than a museum. It is a labyrinth of human creativity, with Egyptian mummies, Greek statues, Renaissance masterpieces, and French paintings all sharing the same immense halls. Not far away stands the Musée d'Orsay, itself a work of art in architecture. Once a grand railway station, it now houses the world's greatest collection of Impressionist paintings. Monet's water lilies, Renoir's dancers, Degas' ballerinas, and Van Gogh's swirls of colour transform its walls into a festival of light and motion. This museum embodies how France has not only preserved art, but also reimagined spaces to celebrate it. The transformation of a train station into a temple of creativity feels very French. practical and poetic all at once. Beyond paintings, France has expressed its artistry most visibly through architecture. The Gothic cathedrals that rise from medieval towns are masterpieces of both engineering and faith. Notre Dame de Paris, despite the tragic fire of 2019, remains an icon of French Gothic design, its flying buttresses arching like stone wings. Chartres Cathedral, with its mystical blue stained glass, turned sunlight into a kaleidoscope of devotion. These buildings were not only religious spaces, but also communal projects, built over centuries by countless hands, each stone carrying the weight of belief and ambition. As time passed, Gothic gave way to Renaissance elegance. The chateaux of the Loire Valley, with their delicate towers, grand staircases, and ornamental gardens, embody the French Renaissance. Château de Chambord, with its intricate roofline and double helix staircase, looks almost like something dreamed up in a moment of whimsy. These castles were not merely defensive fortresses, but showcases of taste and refinement, where art and architecture blended seamlessly into a vision of power and pleasure. In the 19th century, the very city of Paris itself became a work of art under the direction of Baron Haussmann. Narrow medieval alleys gave way to wide boulevards lined with uniform facades of creamy stone adorned with wrought iron balconies. The result was not only greater order and light, but also a stage for public life. The Paris that people fall in love with, the sweeping vistas, the leafy avenues, the feeling of elegance at every corner, owes much to this transformation. Haussmann's Paris is as much a monument as any cathedral, a living design in which millions carry on their daily routines. French creativity has always extended beyond the monumental into the decorative. Lace-making flourished in regions such as Alençon and Calais, where delicate patterns were painstakingly woven by hand, often taking weeks to complete. These fine works adorned royal garments and ecclesiastical vestments, transforming thread into treasures. Porcelain from Sèvres, with its delicate colours and gilded edges, became prized across Europe, as did the Gobelins tapestries, vast woven scenes that decorated palaces with mythological tales, landscapes, and historical epics. These decorative arts reflected not only skill, but also a national obsession with detail, refinement, and beauty in the everyday. Fashion, of course, has become perhaps the most famous expression of French artistry. Paris holds a reputation as the capital of style, home to haute couture houses that set global trends. Designers such as Coco Chanel revolutionized women's clothing in the 20th century, freeing it from corsets and heavy fabrics with elegant simplicity. Christian Dior, Yves Saint Laurent, and countless others transformed fabric into art, presenting not merely clothes, but visions of identity, empowerment, and fantasy. Today, Paris Fashion Week draws designers, models, and admirers from every corner of the globe, a reminder that French style remains both daring and defining. Fashion in France is more than luxury. It is cultural identity, a visible expression of the nation's long romance with beauty. Modern art movements also owe much to France. Impressionism, born in Paris in the late 19th century, was once dismissed as scandalous. Painters like Monet, Renoir, and Pissarro dared to paint fleeting moments, light as it flickered on water, or the quick brush of a dancer's skirt. What critics mocked as unfinished impressions soon became one of the most beloved artistic revolutions in history. These works did not seek perfection in detail, but captured the sensation of being alive in a given instant. From Impressionism flowed other bold movements. The Surrealists, led by André Breton, and embodied in the dreamlike paintings of artists like Salvador Dalí, though Spanish, found fertile ground in Paris. They turned art into a theatre of the subconscious, where clocks melted and landscapes twisted into impossible forms. Surrealism invited viewers to see reality not as fixed, but as endlessly flexible, shaped by imagination and the unconscious mind. Contemporary art in France continues this tradition of daring exploration. Museums such as the Centre Pompidou display works that challenge, amuse, or puzzle, while public art installations transform urban spaces into playgrounds of creativity. Street art in cities like Paris and Lyon has become another form of cultural expression, reclaiming walls and alleys as canvases for bold messages and bursts of colour. In this way, creativity in France refuses to remain confined to the past. It is alive, restless, and constantly reinventing itself. What ties all of these expressions together, from cathedrals to couture, from tapestries to graffiti, is the French belief that art is not a luxury, but an essential part of life. It is present in grand museums and humble bakeries, in palaces and in public parks. It insists that beauty matters, that details matter, and that human creativity is worth celebrating at every scale. France's art, craft, and creativity are not simply about objects, but about attitudes. To design a boulevard that invites walking, to bake bread with an eye for perfection, to sew lace so fine it seems like air. These are acts of artistry as much as painting or sculpture. The French approach life itself as something to be shaped, refined, and made beautiful. And in doing so, they remind the world that art is not only what hangs on walls, but what we create in the way we live. French culture has always had a love affair with words. From the grand halls of the Enlightenment to the smoky cafés of Paris, from folk tales whispered in cottages to novels that fill entire shelves, France has produced a literary tradition that feels almost inseparable from its identity. To speak of France is to speak of stories, satirical, tragic, philosophical, poetic, and always deeply human. The stage is a good place to begin, for French theatre gave the world one of its greatest masters, Molière. Writing in the 17th century, Molière combined wit, satire, and theatrical brilliance to create plays that still resonate. His works, such as Tartuffe and the Misanthrope, poked fun at hypocrisy, vanity, and human folly, often in ways that annoyed the powerful but delighted audiences. Centuries later, his plays are still performed in the Comédie Française, the theatre founded under royal patronage that remains a living monument to French drama. Molière's sharp observations remind us that laughter can be just as revealing as philosophy. The 18th century brought a different kind of pen to prominence. Voltaire, perhaps the quintessential Enlightenment thinker, wielded satire as a weapon against ignorance, fanaticism, and tyranny. His Candide remains a masterpiece of irony, a short novel that skewers optimism while urging readers to cultivate their own gardens, both literally and metaphorically. Voltaire's voice was not just literary but political. He argued fiercely for tolerance, freedom of speech, and reason. In many ways, his words laid groundwork for the revolutionary ideals that soon shook France and the wider world. The 19th century saw an explosion of French literary giants, each one shaping how we think of novels even today. Victor Hugo towered over the century with his sweeping works. Les Miserables is both a social critique and a hymn to redemption, weaving together the struggles of the poor, the weight of justice, and the possibility of grace. The Hunchback of Notre Dame not only gave literature one of its most tragic figures, but also helped save Gothic architecture, as readers were moved to preserve the cathedral at the heart of the story. Hugo's blend of politics, romance, and spirituality made him not just an author, but a cultural force. Alongside Hugo, Honoré de Balzac laboured on his vast project, La Comédie Humaine. This sprawling series of novels and stories aimed to capture every facet of French society, from bankers and lawyers to peasants and courtesans. Balzac's characters often reappear across books, creating a kind of living tapestry where no detail is too small and no ambition too grand. His work is sometimes described as the literary equivalent of a microscope, revealing the hidden workings of society. The French literary tradition didn't stop with epic tales or biting satire. It also embraced philosophy and movements that sought to reshape how humans understood the world. The symbolists of the late 19th century, such as Stéphane Mallarmé and Paul Verlaine, explored music-like rhythms and obscure imagery, suggesting meanings rather than spelling them out. Their poetry aimed to capture moods and sensations, to paint with words in ways that mirrored Impressionist art. The 20th century brought existentialism into the literary spotlight. Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir turned novels, essays, and plays into vehicles for philosophy. They grappled with questions of freedom, responsibility, and meaning in a world that often felt absurd. Albert Camus, though rejecting the label of existentialist, explored similar terrain in works like The Stranger and The Plague. His notion of the absurd, the conflict between humanity's search for meaning and the indifference of the universe, gave literature a new kind of tragic hero, one who rebels simply by choosing to live authentically. These works turned Paris into an intellectual capital where smoky left-bank cafés became classrooms of existential debate. But French literature has never belonged only to the great thinkers. It has always drawn from fairy tales and folklore, from the oral traditions passed down through generations. Charles Perrault, writing in the 17th century, gave the world enduring stories such as Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, and Little Red Riding Hood. These tales, adapted countless times, still carry his fingerprints. Folklore from Brittany, with its Celtic roots, tells of Corrigans, mischievous little spirits said to live near stones and springs, while the Alps echo with legends of wolves and mountain ghosts. These stories may seem quaint, but they reveal how imagination has always flourished alongside philosophy in the French mind. French poetry, too, carries a special fire. Arthur Rimbaud, the enfant terrible of poetry, wrote most of his greatest works as a teenager before abandoning literature altogether. His dazzling surreal verses broke rules and opened new paths for modern poetry. Charles Baudelaire, with his collection Les Fleurs du Mal, shocked polite society with poems that explored beauty, decadence, and despair. His vision of the city as both intoxicating and corrupt influenced writers and artists across the world. Together, Baudelaire and Rimbaud gave French poetry an edge that was both romantic and rebellious, a reminder that words can burn as much as they can soothe. In the present day, French literature continues to thrive, with contemporary authors building on this immense legacy. Writers like Patrick Modiano, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2014, explore memory, loss, and identity, often through the shadows of wartime France. Michel Houellebecq, controversial and provocative, writes novels that dissect modern anxieties with sharp, often uncomfortable precision. Leila Slimani, whose novel Chanson Douce earned the prestigious Prix Goncourt in 2016, addresses themes of family, gender, and migration, speaking to the realities of 21st century France. Literary prizes remain central to the French cultural landscape, with the Prix Goncourt, the Prix Renaudot, and the Prix Femina shaping reading lists and sparking debates each year. Storytelling in France has also moved beyond the page. The tradition of salons, where intellectuals and artists gathered to debate ideas and share work, created a culture where words were not confined to books, but performed in conversation. That tradition continues in modern France through public readings, festivals, and literary cafés, where discussions can still last until midnight. Cinema, too, became a new storytelling art in which France excelled. The Lumière brothers pioneered film in the late 19th century, and directors like François Truffaut and Jean-Luc Godard transformed cinema in the 20th century with the New Wave, a movement that rejected polished studio productions in favour of raw, experimental, deeply personal films. Today, French cinema continues to carry the spirit of literary storytelling, blending narrative depth with visual art. Novels are adapted into films, and films often read like novels, steeped in character and reflection. In this way, the French tradition of storytelling remains as vibrant as ever, shifting from parchment to paperback, from stage to screen, without ever losing its fascination with the human condition. What makes French literature and storytelling so remarkable is not only the brilliance of its great names, but the consistency of its devotion to words. Whether through the satire of Molière, the thunder of Hugo, the rebellion of Rimbaud, or the contemporary voices of Slimani and Houellebecq, French writing has always aimed to probe deeper, to question assumptions, to entertain while also challenging. The French have never treated literature as a pastime alone. It has been a weapon, a mirror, a comfort, and a compass. France is written not only in its monuments and landscapes, but in the words of its writers, poets, and philosophers. These voices, carried through centuries, continue to echo like constellations in the cultural sky, guiding thought, sparking emotion, and reminding us that the power of a story can be as enduring as stone. France may be a land of philosophers, poets, and painters, but it is also a nation that loves to play. Sport in France is more than competition. It is community, celebration, and often a reflection of national pride. From packed stadiums to mountain roads filled with cyclists, from rugby scrums to village games, the French playful spirit finds its expression in countless ways. The most popular sport in France, without question, is football. Known across the Atlantic as soccer, football is both pastime and passion. Children kick balls across playgrounds and courtyards, while amateur clubs in villages and towns provide a steady supply of local heroes. Professional football, however, is where the country's heart beats loudest. The French national team, Les Bleus, has won the FIFA World Cup twice, first in 1998 on home soil and again in 2018 in Russia. The 1998 victory with Captain Didier Deschamps and the brilliance of Zinedine Zidane, was celebrated as a moment of unity, symbolising a diverse France standing together. 2 decades later, the 2018 team, led by Kylian Mbappé and Antoine Griezmann, brought the same joy to new generations. Club football is equally fierce, with teams like Paris Saint-Germain attracting global stars and regional rivalries adding fire to weekly matches. Cycling, however, holds a special place in the French soul. The Tour de France, first organised in 1903, has grown into the most famous cycling race in the world. Each July, millions line the roads as riders speed through plains, mountains and villages, cheered on by spectators waving flags and picnicking along the route. The race is not just about sport, but about showcasing the landscape of France. Television cameras linger on castles, lavender fields, vineyards and alpine peaks, turning the race into a 3-week postcard of the nation. The Tour is a cultural event as much as a sporting competition, a moving festival where the endurance of cyclists meets the enthusiasm of fans. Even those who do not follow cycling closely often find themselves swept up in its spectacle, waiting for the riders to flash by in a blur of colour and determination. Rugby, too, enjoys a passionate following, particularly in the southwest of the country. In cities like Toulouse, Bordeaux and Clermont-Ferrand, rugby is more than a sport. It is a local identity. The French national rugby team has a reputation for flair and unpredictability, capable of moments of brilliance that leave fans elated and moments of chaos that leave them bewildered. The Six Nations Championship, played annually against England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales and Italy, is followed with fervour, and victories are celebrated as triumphs of both athleticism and character. In towns where rugby dominates, match days transform into community gatherings, with fans spilling into squares and cafes, wearing team colours and discussing every pass, tackle and try. France's playful spirit extends beyond its national obsessions to a proud Olympic legacy. Paris hosted the Olympic Games in 1900 and again in 1924, and is set to host them once more in 2024, making it one of the rare cities to hold the Games 3 times. French athletes have excelled in disciplines ranging from fencing and judo to athletics and swimming. Names like Marie-Josée Pérec, the 3-time Olympic gold medalist in sprinting, or Teddy Riner, the towering judo champion with multiple gold medals, have become synonymous with French sporting greatness. Hosting the Games has always been seen as more than organising competitions. It's a chance for France to present itself to the world, celebrating not only its athletes, but also its culture and hospitality. Beyond the professional and the international, France has nurtured countless traditional games and regional pastimes. In Provence and across the south, the game of pétanque is practically a way of life. Played with heavy metal balls tossed toward a small wooden target, pétanque is as much about banter, relaxation and socialising as it is about precision. You can find groups of players, often retirees but not exclusively, under the shade of plane trees in village squares, their laughter and good-natured teasing filling the summer air. Other regions maintain their own traditional pastimes. In the Basque country, pelota is played with astonishing speed and skill, involving a ball bounced against a wall with a wicker basket or bare hand. This sport has deep cultural roots and is still performed at local festivals with great pride. In Brittany, traditional wrestling known as Guren survives as part of local heritage, emphasising not only strength but also respect for opponents. These games connect communities to their history, ensuring that play is not just modern spectacle, but also cultural continuity. Fan culture in France is as rich and varied as the sports themselves. Stadiums on match days come alive with chants, flags, and waves of colour. French fans are known for their creativity, crafting songs, banners, and displays that transform the atmosphere into a spectacle in its own right. Football matches, particularly those involving the national team or fierce club rivalries, often feel less like sporting events and more like national celebrations or dramas. Yet sport in France is not confined to arenas. Cafés play a central role in how games are experienced. On big match days, screens are set up and crowds gather to watch together. The café becomes an extension of the stadium, where strangers embrace over goals, debate referees' decisions, and raise glasses in unison. When France wins, car horns blare in cities, people pour into the streets, and tricolour flags wave from balconies. Victories are not quiet affairs. They become national festivals of joy. Celebration rituals in France are often infused with a sense of style. The Champs-Élysées has become the traditional finishing line of the Tour de France, where the yellow jersey is presented in front of cheering crowds and television cameras broadcasting around the world. After World Cup triumphs, the same avenue transforms into a river of fans, singing, dancing and waving flags well into the night. These moments reveal that in France, sport is not just physical competition, but also a powerful expression of identity and unity. What makes the playful spirit of France so captivating is its blend of seriousness and joy. Athletes train with discipline, fans follow games with passion, and victories are celebrated with intensity. Yet, underlying it all is a sense of pleasure, of community, and of style. Whether it as an Olympic medal ceremony, a village pétanque game, or a Tour de France stage winding through the Alps, sport in France carries with it the essence of play, not just as recreation, but as a way of being together, of expressing who the French are. France's contribution to the world of sport is vast, but what truly defines it is this spirit of playfulness, where competition becomes culture and games become celebrations. From football stadiums echoing with chants, to mountain passes filled with cheering cyclists, to village squares where pétanque balls clink against each other in the afternoon sun, the playful heartbeat of France continues to remind the world that sport is not just about winning, it is about living. Festivals and feasts in France are not simply dates on a calendar. They are the lifeblood of communities, a reminder that joy, memory, and tradition can be shared around tables, in streets, and beneath skies filled with light. Each season offers its own rhythm of celebration, from national holidays filled with patriotism to intimate village fairs that tie the present to the past. The French love of gathering, eating, singing, and parading ensures that every corner of the country has its own way of marking time. The most famous of these celebrations is Bastille Day, held each year on July the 14th. It commemorates the storming of the Bastille prison in 1789, a pivotal moment in the French Revolution. The day has since become France's national holiday, a blend of history and modern pride. In Paris, the Champs-Élysées fills with the grandest military parade in Europe, where soldiers, tanks and aircraft march and fly in synchronized display. At night, fireworks explode above the Eiffel Tower, showering sparks of red, white and blue across the summer sky. Across the country, towns and villages hold their own parades, dances and firework shows, ensuring that the spirit of revolution and unity continues to shine more than 2 centuries later. Yet French festivals are not confined to patriotic anniversaries. Carnival, rooted in pre-Lenten traditions, bursts forth each year with costumes, music and merrymaking. The Carnival of Nice, one of the world's largest, transforms the city into a riot of colour with parades of giant floats, flower battles where blossoms are thrown into crowds, and street performers bringing laughter to every corner. Dunkirk, in the north, has its own carnival tradition, equally exuberant but with a unique flavour. Here, fishermen's songs and chaotic parades reflect the town's maritime history, creating a celebration as quirky as it is lively. Wine harvest festivals are another highlight of French life, especially in regions where vineyards stretch to the horizon. In Burgundy, the Fête des Grands Vins brings connoisseurs and novices alike to sample the year's production, accompanied by music and feasting. In Alsace, the wine harvest is marked with parades where vintners, musicians, and dancers in traditional costume wind their way through cobblestone streets. These festivals remind all that wine in France is more than a drink. It is the fruit of a year's labour, the essence of soil, sun, and tradition celebrated communally. Medieval fairs bring another layer of French festivity, especially in towns rich with history. Places like Provins, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, host medieval festivals that transport visitors back centuries. Streets fill with jugglers, falconers, craftsmen, and troubadours, while banquets offer roasted meats and spiced wines. These fairs are not just reenactments, but living celebrations of heritage, connecting modern communities to their ancestors in a spirit of shared delight. As the year turns toward winter, Christmas transforms parts of France into places of wonder. Nowhere is this more enchanting than Alsace, where Christmas markets have been held since the Middle Ages. Strasbourg, known as the capital of Christmas, glows with thousands of lights strung across timber-framed houses, its cathedral square filled with wooden stalls offering ornaments, mulled wine, gingerbread, and handmade toys. Colmar, with its canals and half-timbered streets, becomes almost storybook-like, its markets spreading across the town in pockets of glowing warmth. These Christmas markets are not merely places to shop, but to gather, to sip hot drinks, to listen to choirs, and to bask in the joy of winter's brightest season. Easter brings its own set of traditions, blending the sacred and the playful. According to legend, church bells fly to Rome on Good Friday and return on Easter Sunday, dropping chocolate eggs and treats for children along the way. Across France, chocolatiers create elaborate sculptures of bells, eggs, and even fish, known as poissons d'avril, which are exchanged as gifts. Villages often hold fairs with rides, games, and markets, making Easter a time not only of reflection, but also of delight. These seasonal events reflect how festivals in France often straddle the boundary between religious heritage and communal festivity. Modern France has also created its own new traditions. The Fête de la Musique, launched in 1982, has grown into a nationwide celebration each June 21st, marking the summer solstice with music in every imaginable form. On this day, streets, squares, parks, and even train stations come alive with performers, both amateur and professional. Rock bands, jazz ensembles, choirs, and classical orchestras all share the stage of the nation, reminding everyone that music belongs not only in concert halls, but in the everyday fabric of life. It is an egalitarian festival of sound, embodying the French belief that art should be accessible to all. Equally spectacular is Lyon's Festival of Lights, held each December. What began centuries ago as a humble tradition of placing candles in windows to honour the Virgin Mary has evolved into one of the most breathtaking light festivals in the world. For 4 nights, the city is transformed into a glowing canvas. Historic buildings, bridges, and public spaces become illuminated works of art, with projections, installations, and performances creating a dreamlike atmosphere. Millions of visitors wander the streets, their faces lit by shifting colours, their breaths visible in the winter air. The festival combines old devotion with new creativity, blending faith, history, and modern technology into a luminous celebration. Smaller regional festivals add even more colour to the French calendar. In Brittany, Fest-Noz gatherings keep traditional music and dance alive, filling halls with the sound of fiddles and bagpipes as entire communities join in circles of dance. In Provence, lavender festivals mark the bloom of summer, with parades, concerts, and markets awash in purple. In Normandy, apple festivals celebrate cider and calvados with tastings, competitions, and fairs. These local events may not draw international fame, but they hold profound meaning for the communities that host them, keeping traditions vibrant and alive. What unites all these diverse celebrations is their sense of atmosphere, often most magical at night. Lanterns strung across village streets cast golden glows, choirs sing beneath cathedral spires, and fireworks light up the skies. France understands that festivals are not merely about daytime parades or formal rituals, but about creating moments where ordinary life feels touched by something extraordinary. A harvest feast under the stars, a midsummer concert in a square, or a winter evening warmed by mulled wine and glowing candles. All become memories that linger. Festivals and feasts in France carry both grandeur and intimacy. They can involve millions watching fireworks in Paris, or a handful of neighbours gathering for pétanque and shared wine at a village fair. They remind people of history while also offering joy in the present. They blend solemnity and silliness, faith and fun, patriotism and play. At their core, these celebrations are about connection between past and present, between community and individual, between the rhythms of the year and the rhythm of life itself. In every firework, every lantern, every glass raised in toast, France affirms its love of gathering, its devotion to beauty, and its enduring belief that life is meant to be celebrated. France is often thought of in terms of its cities, its wines, its art, and its cuisine, but beneath all of that is a land rich with living creatures and blooming landscapes. From the rugged peaks of the Alps to the gentle meadows of Provence, from the dense forests of the Ardennes to the glittering coastline of the Mediterranean, the natural world of France offers as much variety as its culture. To walk across the French countryside is to move through habitats filled with both familiar animals and surprising species, with plants and flowers that have inspired painters, poets, and perfumers for centuries. Among the most evocative animals of France are its wolves. Once widespread across the country, wolves disappeared almost entirely in the 20th century, hunted to extinction in many regions. But in the 1990s, they returned, migrating naturally across the Alps from Italy. Today, small populations roam the French Alps and the Pyrenees, sparking debates between conservationists and farmers who worry about their flocks. To some, the wolf represents a symbol of wildness restored, a reminder that nature cannot be entirely tamed. To others, it is a challenge, forcing humans to balance tradition with ecological responsibility. Either way, the presence of wolves adds a touch of ancient mystery to the mountains, as if old stories had stepped back into reality. Wild boars, by contrast, have never truly gone away. These sturdy creatures roam forests and fields across France, rooting for food with their tusks and often venturing boldly into farmland. Known for their resilience and adaptability, wild boars have become almost emblematic of the French countryside. In fact, they are so numerous that they sometimes cause traffic accidents or wander into towns, much to the surprise of residents. Hunters see them as prized game, while farmers view them as nuisances. But there is something undeniably French about a creature that is both admired and grumbled about over a glass of wine. Above the fields and forests, birds of prey wheel in the skies. The golden eagle, with its vast wingspan, soars over the Alps and Pyrenees, a majestic predator whose presence commands awe. Falcons and buzzards glide over meadows, watching intently for movement below. In the wetlands of the Camargue, flamingos turn the water pink with their reflections, creating scenes that seem almost dreamlike. Birdwatchers find France a paradise of diversity, with migratory routes bringing countless species across its skies each year. Yet not all of France's animals are flesh and blood. Folklore has filled the countryside with beasts that live only in imagination. In medieval tales, dragons lurked in caves, often slain by saints or knights, their stories echoing the fears and hopes of villagers. In the Pyrenees, legends tell of the Bustling, a wild, hairy man of the forest who guarded flocks and taught humans how to cultivate the land. Breton folklore is rich with spirits and strange beings, from korrigans, mischievous little sprites that haunt springs and stones, to ghostly horses that appear on stormy nights. These creatures, whether terrifying or protective, reveal how deeply the French once saw nature as enchanted, alive with forces beyond their control. The landscapes that foster both real animals and mythical ones are astonishingly varied. The Pyrenees form a natural border with Spain, their snow-capped peaks sheltering bears, marmots and chamois, while their valleys burst with alpine flowers in summer. The Mediterranean coast, in contrast, offers a completely different ecosystem, sun-drenched, salty and fragrant. Here, olive trees cling to hillsides, cicadas sing endlessly in the heat, and marine life thrives in the blue waters offshore. The forests of the Ardennes and the Vosges are dense and mysterious, filled with deer, lynx and owls, while the Loire and Dordogne rivers nourish fertile valleys that sustain both wildlife and human agriculture. France has taken steps to preserve these treasures through its national parks and reserves. The Vanoise National Park, created in the Alps in 1963, was the country's first, established to protect species such as the ibex, once nearly extinct in the region. Today, it remains a sanctuary for mountain wildlife, where hikers can glimpse chamois leaping across ridges or marmots sunning themselves on rocks. The Cévennes National Park in the south blends rugged mountains with cultural heritage, its landscapes shaped by centuries of shepherding. In the Pyrenees National Park, conservation efforts protect brown bears, whose population has been slowly increasing. Beyond the mountains, the Camargue Regional Park shelters flamingos, wild horses and rice paddies, creating a unique blend of natural and human-shaped environments. These parks reflect the French recognition that their natural heritage is as worthy of pride and protection as their art and architecture. Plants and flowers add another layer of richness to this natural canvas. Lavender, perhaps the most iconic, transforms the fields of Provence each summer into purple seas that stretch to the horizon. The sight is unforgettable, but it is the scent that lingers, soothing, sharp, and unmistakably tied to the region. Lavender has been used for centuries in perfumes, soaps and medicine, embodying both beauty and utility. In the countryside, wild poppies splash fields with red, delicate but abundant, often growing between rows of wheat. Their fragile petals, trembling in the breeze, have long been symbols of both joy and remembrance. Vineyards, too, shape much of France's plant life. Though cultivated by human hands, vines are as much a part of the landscape as rivers or hills. The neat rows of grapevines in Bordeaux, Burgundy, or Champagne are as iconic as lavender fields or mountain lakes. The cycle of growth, harvest, and rest ties communities to the rhythm of nature, making vineyards not only sources of wine, but also emblems of cultural continuity. France's forests hold treasures as well. Chestnut trees, once called the bread of the poor, fed generations with their nourishing nuts. Oak and beech provide habitats for countless species, while pine forests in the lands were planted to stabilize dunes and now stretch as far as the eye can see. In alpine meadows, gentians and edelweiss bloom, delicate but resilient, symbols of life thriving in extreme conditions. The sheer variety of flora makes the French countryside a shifting palette of colours and scents throughout the year. These landscapes, animals, and plants are not isolated from human life. They are interwoven with it. Wolves challenge shepherds, but also inspire awe. Boars fill hunters' freezers while trampling vineyards. Lavender supports both farmers and perfumers. Folklore transforms forests and rivers into stages for tales that still enchant children. The French relationship with their natural world is marked by both tension and love, by practical necessity and poetic imagination. What emerges from this land of beasts and blossoms is a portrait of France not only as a cultural nation, but as a living ecosystem, where wildness persists and beauty thrives. The wolf's howl in the Alps, the flight of an eagle, the splash of a fish in the Dordogne, the scent of lavender in the summer air. All of these are as much a part of France as its cathedrals or cuisine. Nature, whether feared, celebrated, cultivated or protected, has always shaped the identity of this land. To look at France through its wildlife and flora is to see it not only as a nation of people, but as a nation of landscapes, filled with creatures real and imagined, fields that bloom, and forests that whisper. It is a reminder that alongside its monuments and museums, France holds a living heritage of animals and plants, each carrying its own story, each adding its own note to the grand symphony of the land. France today is a country stitched together by threads of history and innovation, tradition and reinvention. It is a modern tapestry where the old and the new sit side by side, often in tension but always in conversation. To walk through its cities, sit in its cafes, or listen to its debates is to see a nation that constantly reshapes itself without losing sight of its identity. Urban life is the stage where this tapestry is most visible. Paris remains the jewel at its centre, a metropolis of over 2 million people whose influence stretches far beyond its borders. The city is both timeless and ever-changing. Its boulevards, designed in the 19th century by Haussmann, remain wide and elegant, while glass skyscrapers now rise in districts like La Défense, reflecting the skyline of a global financial hub. Paris is at once the city of the Louvre and the Eiffel Tower, and the city of buzzing tech startups and modern art installations. It is where the glamour of haute couture coexists with the graffiti of street artists, where centuries-old bakeries stand next to sleek concept stores. Above all, Paris is a city that still thrives on its own myth, romantic, artistic, intellectual, yet never stops evolving. Lyon, France's second city in many ways, offers a different character. Nestled where the Rhône and Saône rivers meet, Lyon has long been a crossroads of trade and culture. Its Renaissance old town is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Its hidden passageways, known as triboules, whispering secrets of silk merchants and wartime resistance fighters. Yet Lyon is also modern, known as a gastronomic capital and as a centre for biotech and pharmaceuticals. Its blend of tradition and innovation reflects how French cities outside Paris have learned to cultivate distinct personalities, asserting their own cultural and economic importance. Marseille, on the Mediterranean coast, is another story altogether. France's oldest city, founded by Greek sailors over 2.5 millennia ago, Marseille remains a place of diversity and energy. Its port has welcomed migrants for centuries, giving the city a multicultural character that is visible in its food, music, and neighbourhoods. The sound of Mediterranean seagulls mixes with the call to prayer. Provençal markets mingle with North African spices, and graffiti murals cover entire walls in vibrant colour. Marseille feels raw and alive, less polished than Paris, but deeply authentic, carrying the soul of a city that has always been open to the sea and the world. These urban centres are connected not only by infrastructure, but by the culture of public spaces. France thrives on the simple art of gathering. Boulevards lined with plane trees invite leisurely strolls, while markets burst with chatter as vendors display cheeses, breads, and seasonal fruits. Cafés remain the beating heart of social life, whether in Parisian neighbourhoods or small provincial towns. To sit at a café table is to be part of a centuries-old ritual, sipping slowly, reading a newspaper, watching the world go by, or engaging in lively conversation. In these public spaces, one can sense the continuity of French life, where individuality meets community and leisure is taken seriously. Technology, cinema, and pop culture have also become vibrant threads in France's modern tapestry. The country has long cherished its cinema, considering it not only entertainment, but also art. The Cannes Film Festival is a global showcase, where red carpets and flashing cameras meet auteur directors and serious debates about storytelling. French filmmakers continue to produce works that balance the experimental with the accessible, and French audiences often treat cinema with the same seriousness given to literature or philosophy. Technology has reshaped French life as well. Paris and other cities have developed thriving startup cultures with innovations in green energy, artificial intelligence, and fashion technology. The French government has promoted this shift, branding Paris as a European tech hub. Meanwhile, French popular culture has grown increasingly global. Musicians, rappers, and electronic artists shape international trends, while fashion, always central to France's image, now merges traditional craftsmanship with futuristic design. Yet even as France embraces modernity, it holds on to a peculiar relationship with work and life. The French are famously protective of their work-life balance. The standard work week remains 35 hours, and vacation time is cherished as sacred. Cafés fill with people on long lunch breaks, and summer brings migrations to the coast or countryside. At the same time, France is a nation that embraces protest as part of civic life. Strikes are frequent, often over labour rights, pensions, or wages, and they are seen not merely as disruptions, but as expressions of democracy in action. Streets fill with banners and chants, revealing a society where civic engagement is not confined to voting booths, but lived out in public squares. Generational shifts are shaping France as much as tradition. Younger generations, growing up in a digital world, balance pride in their heritage with global influences. They listen to French rap alongside American pop, watch Netflix while still attending local film festivals, and use technology to blend old customs with new habits. Climate change awareness is particularly strong among French youth, with activism and sustainability becoming central themes in schools and communities. This generational spirit does not reject tradition, but questions it, asking how it can be adapted to modern realities. At the same time, older generations carry their own weight of memory and identity. For many, France is tied to stories of the resistance, the rebuilding after war, and the establishment of the European Union. Their experiences shape how they view civic duty, national pride, and community. The dialogue between young and old in France is often heated, but it is also vital, ensuring that the national identity continues to evolve without breaking. The modern tapestry of France is one of contrasts. Parisian chic meets Marseille grit, tradition meets experimentation, work-life balance meets civic unrest. Cafés welcome both poets and programmers, while boulevards carry both protest marches and fashion parades. France remains fiercely protective of its culture, language, and values, even as it adapts to a globalized world. In the end, what makes modern France compelling is this refusal to settle into one identity. It is a nation constantly in conversation with itself, between regions, between generations, between past and future. Its streets, markets, and public spaces are living rooms of democracy and creativity. Its cities pulse with history, while also racing toward innovation. Its youth bring new rhythms, while its traditions keep the beat steady. To witness France today is to see a society weaving all these threads together, imperfectly but vibrantly, into a tapestry that is as colourful and complex as its history. It is a reminder that identity is not fixed, but woven anew each day, in every cafe conversation, every protest march, every film premiere, and every evening stroll down a boulevard glowing with light. France is often thought of as a single, unified nation, yet anyone who travels across its landscapes quickly discovers that it is more like a quilt, stitched together from regions that each carry their own colours, flavours, and rhythms. To speak of France as one is to miss the extraordinary variety that makes it so compelling. It is a home of many colours, where Provence is not Normandy, Alsace is not Corsica, and the faraway overseas territories add yet another dimension to the national story. Provence in the south is a land bathed in sun and scented with lavender. Its villages perch on hilltops, their stone walls glowing golden in the afternoon light. Olive trees twist in the fields, cicadas sing in the heat, and markets overflow with tomatoes, peppers, and herbs that seem to taste of summer itself. Provence has long attracted painters and poets, from Cézanne to Van Gogh, drawn by its luminous skies and its gentle landscapes. Its cuisine reflects the Mediterranean. Ratatouille, simmered from garden vegetables. Bouillabaisse, rich with saffron and fish. And rosé wines that are as much a lifestyle as a drink. The dialects here once included Provençal, part of the larger Occitan family, and though French dominates today, a sense of distinct identity lingers in the festivals, the music, and the slower rhythm of life. Normandy, far to the north, could not feel more different. Here the skies are often dramatic, the coastline rugged, and the air tinged with salt from the Channel winds. The architecture shifts from stone farmhouses to timber-framed houses in towns like Rouen and Honfleur. Normandy is famous for its dairy, producing creamy camembert cheese and rich butter that gives its cuisine a particular heartiness. Apples are everywhere, pressed into cider and distilled into Calvados, the fiery apple brandy that warms cold evenings. History hangs heavy in Normandy, from the medieval grandeur of Mont Saint-Michel, rising like a vision from the sea, to the D-Day beaches where the Second World War turned tides of history. The character of the people, often described as steady and resilient, reflects a landscape that has endured both storms of weather and storms of war. Alsace, hugging the German border, carries a character all its own. Its half-timbered houses with painted shutters look almost storybook-like, especially when decorated with flowers spilling from window boxes. Strasbourg, with its grand cathedral and European institutions, balances Gothic majesty with modern internationalism. The cuisine here reflects centuries of cultural mingling. Sauerkraut dishes called choucroute garni, flammekueche or tarte flambée, topped with cream, onions and bacon, and wines that lean toward whites like Riesling and Gewürztraminer. The Alsatian dialect, influenced by German, adds another layer of distinctiveness. Festivals in Alsace often feel as much Central European as French, and its famous Christmas markets are among the most enchanting in Europe. Corsica, the island of beauty, seems at once French and fiercely its own. Rising from the Mediterranean with rugged mountains and dramatic coastlines, it is a land of independence and pride. The Corsican language, closer to Italian than French, reflects its long history of shifting rulers. Folk songs, often sung in polyphony, capture both defiance and longing. Corsican cuisine draws from the island's natural bounty. Chestnut flour baked into bread, wild boar stews, and cheeses made from sheep and goat milk with strong, earthy flavours. The island's landscapes offer a stunning range, from snow-dusted peaks to turquoise coves, making it a destination both wild and romantic. Corsicans often emphasise their distinct identity, holding fast to traditions that remind visitors that France is not monolithic, but richly plural. And then there are the overseas territories, which expand the definition of France far beyond Europe. Guadeloupe in the Caribbean is a cluster of islands where French identity mingles with Afro-Caribbean culture. Its music pulses with zouk rhythms. Its cuisine blends French techniques with spices and tropical ingredients, and its beaches shimmer with white sand and turquoise waters. Réunion, in the Indian Ocean, lies east of Madagascar, a volcanic island where Creole culture thrives. Its cuisine is a mix of African, Indian, Chinese and French influences, creating dishes filled with curry, rice and fiery chili. French Polynesia, in the Pacific, adds yet another layer. Lagoons, coral reefs, and a Polynesian heritage that infuses daily life with dance, song and myth. These territories remind us that France is not only continental, but global, its identity extending across oceans and cultures. Even within mainland France, hidden corners carry their own magic. The Dordogne region, with its winding rivers and prehistoric caves, feels steeped in time. Villages of honey-coloured stone perch on cliffs, overlooking valleys where goose farms and walnut groves supply the ingredients for rich local dishes. The Dordogne is a place where medieval castles dot the hills, and where the famous Lascaux cave paintings, created by artists tens of thousands of years ago, whisper of humanity's oldest storytelling. The Loire Valley, by contrast, is often called the Garden of France. Here, Renaissance chateaux rise in elegant rows, reflecting in calm rivers. Château de Chambord, with its fantastical roofline, and Château de Chenonceau, arching gracefully across the Rive Cher, are just two examples of how this region became the playground of French royalty. The valley's fertile land also supports vineyards that produce some of France's finest wines, while its mild climate nurtures gardens and orchards that add to its beauty. Visiting the Loire feels like walking through a dreamscape where history, architecture and nature blend seamlessly. This regional diversity is not only visible but tangible in daily life. Architecture shifts from stone to timber, from terracotta tiles in the south to slate roofs in the north. Dialects and accents differ, sometimes so much that locals joke they can tell where someone comes from within a few sentences. Cuisine changes dramatically, from seafood-rich dishes in Brittany to hearty mountain fare in the Alps. Festivals vary too, with Brittany's Fest Noz celebrations filled with Celtic music, Provence's lavender festivals perfumed with summer air, and Alsace's Christmas markets glowing with winter charm. France's many colours are also reflected in its people's pride. While all share the identity of being French, regional belonging remains strong. Ask someone from Normandy, and they may proudly tell you about their cider and coastline. Ask someone from Provence, and they will speak of olives, lavender, and sunshine. This attachment to place creates a sense of richness rather than division, each region contributing its own thread to the larger fabric. What makes France so captivating is precisely this variety. It is not a country that can be defined by one landscape, one cuisine, or one tradition. It is Provence's lavender and Normandy's apples, Alsace's half-timbered houses and Corsica's rugged peaks. It is Guadeloupe's zouk music, Réunion's volcanic slopes, and Polynesia's coral lagoons. It is the Dordogne caves and the Loire's castles, each telling a different story, each adding a different shade. France is, at its heart, a mosaic. Its beauty lies in contrast and complement, in the way that different regions and territories keep their individuality while still belonging to the whole. To see France in full colour is to embrace this diversity, to wander from vineyards to mountains, from markets to beaches, from the heart of Paris to islands across the sea. In doing so, one discovers that France is not just one country. It is many countries woven into one, a home of many colours that continues to dazzle and inspire. France is a country that never walks too far from the echoes of its past. The weight of its history is everywhere, in cobblestone streets where revolutions brewed, in towering monuments to empire, in solemn war memorials that remind each generation of sacrifices made. Yet alongside this reverence for memory lies an equal passion for the future, for invention, for progress, for carving out a role in a rapidly changing world. To understand France today is to see how it moves through time like a pendulum, swinging between tradition and transformation, constantly negotiating what to preserve and what to reinvent. The French Revolution remains one of the deepest echoes in the national psyche. The storming of the Bastille on July the 14th, 1789, is not only commemorated each year with fireworks and parades, but continues to shape the French identity of liberty, equality, and fraternity. The revolution was not just a political upheaval, but a redefinition of what it meant to be French, replacing monarchy with citizenship, and declaring that ordinary people could remake society. Its legacy lives on in how the French fiercely guard their democratic rights, quick to protest when they feel those rights are threatened. The revolution also casts a long shadow, reminding citizens of both the glory and the turbulence that comes when ideals collide with power. France's imperial history also lingers. At its height in the 19th century, the French Empire stretched across Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, and the Pacific. The traces of this empire are visible in architecture, cuisine, language, and even the faces of modern France, where diversity reflects centuries of migration and colonial ties. Yet this legacy is complex, a mixture of pride and painful reckoning. Monuments in Paris celebrate victories and conquests, but debates continue about how to acknowledge the darker sides of colonization. Museums hold artifacts that spark discussion about restitution, while literature and film probe the lingering effects of empire. France continues to wrestle with these memories, seeking ways to integrate them into a broader story of identity. The wars of the 20th century deepened this relationship with history. World War I scarred the French landscape with trenches that still line the countryside in regions like Verdun and the Somme. Memorials rise in towns large and small, carved with the names of sons and fathers who never returned. These reminders are part of daily life, ensuring that the price of conflict is never forgotten. World War II brought further trauma, from the German occupation to the resistance that fought back in shadow and secrecy. Sites such as Oradour-sur-Glane, left in ruins after a massacre, stand as haunting reminders of atrocity. At the same time, the liberation of Paris in 1944 remains a moment of national pride, immortalised in photographs of joyous crowds welcoming Allied soldiers. France's participation in both world wars is remembered not only as history, but as a foundation of its modern sense of duty in global affairs. Museums and monuments ensure these memories are not left behind. The Musée de l'Armée at Les Invalides in Paris houses weapons, uniforms, and personal objects from centuries of conflict, culminating in the tomb of Napoleon Bonaparte, whose presence continues to spark admiration and controversy alike. The Shoah Memorial honours the victims of the Holocaust, ensuring that voices silenced by war are still heard. In towns across the country, simple stone memorials inscribed with "à nos morts" pay tribute to local lives lost in global struggles. For France, remembrance is both a national ritual and a civic responsibility. Yet even as the past is honoured, there's also a flourishing of cultural revival movements that keep older traditions alive. Regional languages such as Breton, Occitan, Basque, and Corsican, once suppressed in favour of national unity, are now enjoying renewed attention. Schools teach them, festivals celebrate them, and music incorporates them into modern forms. Folk traditions, Breton dances, Provençal festivals, Basque sports, are preserved not as relics but as living practices. This revival reflects a broader French desire to maintain diversity within unity, to celebrate regional identities while still affirming the strength of the Republic. On the international stage, France continues to see itself as a major player, not only because of its history, but because of its ambitions for the future. As a founding member of the European Union, it has played a central role in shaping the continent's political and economic integration. French leaders have often championed European unity as a way of amplifying influence, ensuring that Europe can stand as a counterweight to global powers. Within the EU, France balances national interests with commitments to shared goals, reflecting both pride in sovereignty and a recognition of interdependence. Globally, France maintains a visible presence through diplomacy, military engagements, and cultural influence. Its permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council underscores its role in global governance, while its participation in peacekeeping missions and international negotiations reflects a desire to shape global outcomes. French cultural diplomacy, from the global reach of the French language to the influence of cinema, literature, and gastronomy, remains a softer but no less important form of global presence. Looking toward the future, sustainability and climate action have become central challenges. France has positioned itself as a leader in climate negotiations, most notably hosting the Paris Agreement in 2015, a landmark moment in international efforts to combat climate change. Domestically, efforts are underway to expand renewable energy, reduce carbon emissions, and protect biodiversity. Wind farms rise in the countryside, solar panels glint from rooftops, and debates about nuclear energy highlight France's complex choices in balancing environmental goals with energy needs. For a country that treasures its landscapes, from lavender fields to alpine peaks, climate action is not only a global responsibility, but a deeply personal one. Innovation is also woven into France's future. Paris has been branded as a European hub for technology, with startups flourishing in fields ranging from artificial intelligence to green energy. French universities and research institutions remain at the forefront of science, while industries like aerospace, pharmaceuticals, and fashion continue to innovate on a global scale. High-speed trains symbolize this marriage of tradition and modernity, elegant, efficient, and constantly being improved to meet the demands of the future. What then is the future image of France? Perhaps it lies in balance. The country seeks to honour the revolution while adapting democracy to new challenges. It remembers the empire but builds a multicultural present that reflects its global past. It mourns the wars of the 20th century while striving to prevent conflict today. It protects regional traditions even as it pioneers in technology and climate science. In short, France dreams of a future that does not erase its past, but integrates it, weaving memory and progress into the same fabric. The tapestry of France is complex, sometimes contradictory, always evolving. It is a country that debates loudly, protests passionately, and remembers intensely, yet also dreams boldly of what can come next. Its challenge is to remain true to its traditions while not becoming trapped by them, to embrace change without losing the colours that make it unique. If history is the echo that guides its steps, then innovation is the dream that points its way forward. Together, they ensure that France remains not a museum of the past, but a living, breathing nation with both roots and wings. As evening settles over France, the country seems to change its pace, slipping into something softer and slower, like a familiar melody played on a violin in a quiet square. The day's bustle gives way to a gentler rhythm, and the night carries with it a sense of reflection, as though the land itself exhales after hours of conversation, commerce, and colour. In Paris, cafes begin to close their doors, the last cups of coffee cooling on marble-topped tables, chairs stacked neatly for tomorrow's crowd. The voices of the day fade, replaced by the murmur of footsteps on cobblestones and the faint hum of a city preparing for sleep. And then there are the lights. The Eiffel Tower, that iron giant born of 19th century ambition, twinkles against the night sky, in a display of elegance that never feels routine, no matter how many times it is seen. People pause on bridges over the Seine just to watch it shimmer, the reflections dancing on the water like stars brought down to earth. In villages across the country, lamplight spills from shuttered windows, casting golden pools onto narrow lanes. The sound of a closing cafe door, the creak of a bicycle rolling home, the hush of lavender fields cooling under the moon. All of it adds up to a lullaby, written not with notes, but with moments. It is in these hours of quiet that the essence of France comes into sharp relief. Romance is not only in grand gestures or famous landmarks, but in small, fleeting instants. A warm baguette carried home under one arm, steam rising as it is broken open at the table, the breeze of a summer evening carrying the scent of lavender and thyme, the solitary figure of a violinist in a square, bow tracing out melodies that echo against centuries-old walls. These simple pleasures, unhurried and unadorned, are what root the French spirit in both beauty and resilience. Resilience, after all, is as central to France as its romance. This is a country that has endured revolutions, wars and upheavals, yet has always managed to rebuild, to reclaim its streets, to reinvent its culture. The boulevards of Paris were shaped by upheaval, the fields of Normandy scarred by battles, the palaces and cathedrals once shaken by the tides of history. And yet, each time France has risen again, not merely reconstructing the past, but layering it with something new. There is resilience in the farmer who tends vines that have been cultivated for centuries, in the baker who rises before dawn to craft the bread that will define the day, and in the poet who still finds words worth writing even when the world grows heavy. Richness is the final thread, the one that ties the whole tapestry together. It is richness of culture, where art, music, philosophy, and literature bloom in equal measure. It is richness of land, from the Alps crowned with snow to the shores brushed by Atlantic waves, from vineyards glowing under autumn light to forests where wild boar still roam. It is richness of identity, woven from regional traditions, immigrant voices, and a national love for debate, discovery, and dialogue. This richness does not mean excess. It means depth, layers of meaning, and the sense that beneath every detail lies a story waiting to be told. At night, France invites reflection on the details that might otherwise go unnoticed. The shadow of Gothic spires against a darkening sky. The way the Loire glimmers under moonlight, flowing past castles that have stood for centuries. The songs sung quietly at family tables, the laughter spilling out of doorways. The quiet devotion of candles lit in chapels tucked into mountain valleys. To see France at night is to see its poetry, a country that is not afraid of silence, where dreams rise as naturally as the mist over a river at dawn. This is a land that understands the value of lingering, of letting moments stretch. A café in Lyon may keep its last light burning longer than necessary, as though reluctant to let the evening go. In Marseille, the salty air carries whispers of old sailors' tales, stories of distant seas blending with the laughter of those still awake. In Strasbourg, the half-timbered houses look as though they have closed their eyes, but the cathedral keeps its silent vigil, even in the hum of Paris, where taxis still pass and the metro rumbles beneath the earth. There is a softness, a recognition that tomorrow will bring the energy of life again, but tonight belongs to rest. France's good night is not an ending, but a gentle pause, a reminder that romance, resilience, and richness are not fleeting qualities, but enduring companions. They live in the architecture that frames the skyline, in the landscapes that stretch across the horizon, and in the quiet dignity of its people. The nation's soul is not contained in one monument or one story, but in countless fragments. An accordion on a street corner, a lantern glowing in a small town square, a breeze carrying the perfume of fields across the land. If one were to drift to sleep with France in mind, the dreams would likely be filled with images of its contrasts, the sparkle of city lights against the hush of countryside fields, the grandeur of palaces paired with the humility of rustic kitchens, the eternal debates of philosophy balanced with the eternal simplicity of bread and wine. It is a place where the extraordinary and the ordinary meet constantly, and each lends meaning to the other. And so, as the night deepens and France folds itself into sleep, it offers a farewell that feels like a promise that beauty endures, that traditions adapt, that resilience will carry forward, and that tomorrow will always arrive with new light. It is a farewell wrapped in the sound of a distant violin, the glow of lanterns on quiet streets, and the gentle certainty that dreams too are part of the French way of life. Good night from France, a land that rests but never ceases to inspire, where the past lingers like a whisper, and the future glimmers like stars overhead. France is at once a country on the map and a feeling in the heart. To speak of it is to summon not just coordinates or statistics, but an atmosphere, a blend of scents, sounds and sensations that linger long after the journey ends. It is the lavender breeze that drifts across Provence in summer, the briny tang of oysters along the Atlantic coast, the shimmering lights of Paris reflected in the Seine. It is also the weight of its history, carved into stone cathedrals, etched onto monuments, and whispered through cobblestoned lanes. France is a place you can touch and walk through, but it is also something you can carry with you in memory, imagination, or even dream. To journey through France is to wander through a living tapestry of time. Its history has left indelible marks, echoes of revolution, empire, and resilience. Castles and cathedrals rise as reminders of both ambition and devotion, while battlefields and memorials speak quietly of sacrifice. The revolution declared the rights of citizens, the wars tested the nation's endurance, and the long march of centuries created a land both deeply traditional and boldly modern. To look at France today is to see a country that honours the weight of its past, but refuses to live in it, constantly reshaping itself while carrying its history like a trusted companion. But France is not only history, it is also food and drink, perhaps the most delicious lens through which to understand a culture. A warm baguette tucked under the arm, a flaky croissant eaten on a quiet morning, a glass of Bordeaux poured at sunset. These are not luxuries but daily rituals, imbued with care and pride. From the hearty cassoulet of the southwest to the delicate pastries of Paris, from champagne bubbles to Provençal rosé, each dish and drink tells a story of land, labour, and love. Food in France is never just fuel, it is community, conversation, and culture. Art too defines the French spirit. In its museums and galleries hang works that changed how the world sees. The brushstrokes of Monet and Renoir, the surreal visions of Dalí and Magritte, the bold architecture of Gothic cathedrals, and the elegance of Renaissance chateaux. All of these are part of a continuum of creativity. Fashion runways in Paris continue this tradition, turning fabric into poetry, while cinema and literature carry forward the French devotion to storytelling. France has always believed that beauty matters, and that belief shapes everything from its grand boulevards to the lace curtains in village windows. And then there are the people. France's heartbeat lies not only in its monuments or masterpieces, but in its families gathered around Sunday lunches, in friends debating at cafés, in children chasing footballs in city squares. It lies in the warm greetings of La Bise, the spirited chants of fans in stadiums, and the solemn processions at festivals. It lies in a quiet pride of regional identities, Norman, Provençal, Alsatian, Corsican, and in the global voices of its overseas territories. The French spirit is argumentative yet affectionate, philosophical yet playful, rooted yet open to change. It is this mix of character that gives France its vitality. To dream of France is to imagine both grandeur and simplicity. It is to picture the Eiffel Tower glowing at night, but also to imagine the hush of a village lane under starlight. It is to remember the taste of cheese that seems older than time, the sound of a violin in a square, the scent of lavender carried on a summer breeze. It is to feel that sense of continuity, of threads linking past and present, of traditions handed down yet constantly reshaped. What makes France so enduringly captivating is its balance of contradictions. It is at once ancient and modern, romantic and resilient, proud and playful. It treasures its monuments but also its markets, its revolutions but also its routines. It has given the world masterpieces of art and literature, but also the humble baguette that feeds millions each day. It's a place that debates endlessly, protests loudly, celebrates passionately, and dreams constantly. As this exploration draws to a close, it is worth remembering that France is never only what you see, it is also what you feel. It is in the quiet awe of standing beneath stained glass that has glowed for centuries. It's in the laughter that drifts from a cafe at dusk. It is in the echo of footsteps on ancient stones, and the whisper of wind through vineyards. France is a country, yes, but it is also an experience, one that lingers in memory like a song you cannot quite forget. So let the thought of France be a companion as you rest. Imagine its rivers flowing gently under moonlight, its fields alive with colour, its cities glowing with light. Imagine the taste of wine on your tongue, the sound of music on a warm night, the simple contentment of bread shared among friends. In these small details lies the essence of a nation, rich and resilient, endlessly inspiring. And if you close your eyes now, perhaps you will find yourself wandering those cobblestone streets, hearing the bells of distant cathedrals, watching the stars above the lavender fields. Perhaps you will dream of France not as a place to visit, but as a feeling to carry with you, a reminder of beauty, history, and human connection. Good night, then, from France, a land of romance and resilience, of richness and wonder, of echoes from the past and dreams for the future. May its spirit drift with you into sleep, as softly as a breeze over the fields, as gently as starlight over the Seine,